Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody from wherever you are joining us today. And welcome to our super interactive session on water tenure and governance, keys to water and food security, co-organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the German Federal Ministry for Food and Agriculture, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, the Environmental Law Institute, the Water Research Commission South Africa, the International Water Management Institute, the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, and the Nelson Mandela African Institution for Science and Technology in Arusha. It's really wonderful to have you all with us. My name is Benjamin Kirsch. I am a project coordinator with FAO, and I have the privilege of guiding you through our project program today, together with Dumiti Valle and Sofia Espinosa, who will be co-facilitating this event. We also have Sofia Ramirez and Hector Villarreal, who are our technical facilitators. And if you have any issues, please contact them. They can be identified by a little star in front of their names. We have as the title says, a super interactive session. So you will have a lot of possibilities to join in, to give your opinion, to discuss. We will have breakout groups in different events. So I really hope you take this opportunity to actively engage with us. There will be two main segments. In the first segments, we have a presentation of case studies, and debate, and in the second segment we will have a World Cafe setting where you will discuss on what you've learned from the case studies and what the discussion has brought so far. We will use a lot of interactive tools such as Mentimeter, Group Map Survey. We'll have videos and also share our thoughts on Google Documents. But even if you have never used these before, don't worry. We will guide you through this session. It is a very long session, as you have noticed. We have 2.5 hours. Don't worry, there will be a break after the first segment, so you will be able to get some refreshments, and I advise you to just take a glass of water along, so we always keep hydrated during this session. If you haven't replied yet to our group map survey, which is available in the chat box here next to it, please take a minute to do so. And a general comment, we will be using mostly the Zoom chat, since this is an interactive session and you will all have to be connected through Zoom. But of course, also the Pathable chat is open, and you can post any remarks or comments on there. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our opening speaker, Sasha Kuoshima, to give us some welcoming remarks. Sasha is the Deputy Director of the Land and Water Development Division of the Food and Agriculture Organization. She leads programs on agricultural water development and governance, geospatial data, and integrated water resources management. Sasha has over 30 years of experience in international assistance and policy development in agriculture, environment, and natural resource management. She was Director of International Water Program at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and serves as the governing board member of the World Water Council and Independent Advisory Committee of the CJIAR network. Thank you very much, Sasha. You have the floor.
Thank you, Benjamin. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished colleagues, good afternoon and good morning to some of you. I would like to welcome you along with Benjamin to this session on water tenure and governance, keys to water and food security. Before I begin, allow me to also thank the conference organizers and the participating conveners of this session. So my pleasure to be with you today and to share some of my thoughts. This session exemplifies the dialogue and engagement that the world community has committed itself in examining the governance of water and its linkages to food, health, climate, energy, and overall economic development. One of today's global challenges, now accentuated by the COVID health crisis, is the pressure over our natural resources. This pressure calls for a responsible governance of our natural resources in order to promote an economic development that provides decent livelihoods for all communities, that can ensure food, energy, health, security for all. And as we know, this is the underlying thrust of the SDGs, and also leaving no one behind. For agriculture, where we are at FAO, there is no food production without water resources. Irrigated areas cover about 20% of the world's arable land. But in this 20% of arable land, we produce about 40% of the global food. Agriculture activities account for around 70% of the fresh water withdrawals globally. In the Near East and North Africa, freshwater resources are among the lowest in the world. They have decreased by 2/3 during the last 40 years and are expected to fall over 50% by 2050. This is a very dangerous path for water-related ecosystems and the livelihoods for agriculture, and in particular, the smallholders that depend on them. New FAO reports launched this week at the World Water Week observes that about 1/3 of the global population, that's about 2.3 billion people, live in countries experiencing water stress, of which 10%, around 733 million people, live in countries with high or critical water stress. This has significant impact on water access and availability. Farmers may experience increased inequalities in their access to water resources under this water stress condition. Therefore, not only sustainable, but also inclusive and integrated management and governance of the different water uses needs to be promoted. And this is the community to do so. So we must also focus our attention on the rural poor, the small-scale farmers and women and entire communities. So ladies and gentlemen, work by FAO and our partners demonstrates that water access and use are very much influenced by social, political, and economic power relations, as they are by infrastructure and rainfall. A responsible governance of water tenure relies on mechanisms and the processes that articulate the interests of different actors. So the multi-stakeholder actors and their mediation of differences is really important, and ensure that the rights and duties with respect to water are exercised with also transparency and equity. Better understanding of both water tenure and water governance is critical, not only for addressing water-related challenges, but also for ensuring food security and nutrition for all. These are FAO's strategic directions. This requires not only the focus of water efficiency and productivity, but also on the social aspects of water allocation and distribution, how the organizations are formed and how the organizations are coordinated within and among each other. Many issues in governance of management and use of water, as well as other natural resources, are directly linked to tenure rights. And this is the topic of today's session. This session is part of FAO's efforts to bring a better understanding of water governance and water tenure, and to bring these concepts into present development paradigms, and to also accelerate progress towards more sustainable and inclusive natural resources and water management and use. The recognition of the concept of water tenure will help to bring light to the multitude of issues and identify and recognize and ultimately protect all the legitimate water users and their rights to eradicate hunger and also to ensure that no one is left behind. Dialogues and exchanges like this are essential, and actions is even more important. Actions that will lead to effectively improve the situation on the ground. So with today's event, I wish you a very fruitful dialogue and exchange of ideas in the breakout sessions, and to put them into action and implementation post this week's World Water Week. Thank you. Over to you, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Sasha, for these nice and inspiring words. Very much appreciated. Now, many of you may ask yourselves, what is water tenure? And indeed, it's a very new and concept, as Sasha has said. We have prepared a short video that tries to explain what it is and why it is important. And we will now watch this small video. Please, Hector.
Water is essential for life. It passes through the landscape in rivers and lakes, flows underground, and is constantly renewed by the water cycle. On its way from source to the sea, water is used many times by different people and for different purposes. Water is needed for drinking and sanitation, businesses and industry. In many countries, the largest water user is agriculture, to produce food and sustain farmers' livelihoods. Water is also needed by natural vegetation, wildlife and fish in lakes and rivers. Because water is such an important resource, societies all over the world have special relationships with regard to water. They have developed rules to define how much and when the water can be extracted from a water body like a river, lake or canal. Who can extract this water? For which purpose can it be used? In which conditions water should be returned to the environment? For example, if a farmer wants to use water from a river to cultivate her land, she may need to apply for a permit from the Water Users Association based on the water law. In exchange, she may be asked to help to maintain and clean the canal built by the community. In many societies, water or water bodies also have special cultural or religious values. People enjoy water for recreation, and some consider lakes and streams holy places. All these relationships, rights, rules, duties and practices can be described as water tenure. The relationship, whether legally or customarily defined, between people as individuals or groups with respect to water resources. They can be formal, written down in water laws, regulations and policies. Others are customary, unwritten, communicated by word of mouth and passed on from generation to generation. Water tenure arrangements may allocate various rights, in particular the rights to use water, and define the duties to protect the water resources for other users and natural ecosystems. They can also define how water users can resolve conflicts over water resources. Different water tenure arrangements may coexist in the same region or community, and water users may be part of more than one water tenure arrangement. In many places, rights to use water are traditionally tied to land rights. The owner of a land may have the right to use the stream that runs through her property or the groundwater below her plot. Water tenure arrangements should ensure an equitable distribution to all users and protect natural ecosystems. It is important that existing water tenure arrangements are coherent and that all legitimate tenure rights are recognized by national legislation. Conflicts over water resources can arise if water tenure arrangements do not provide fair access to all persons, or if they are not recognized as legitimate by water users. Water tenure arrangements play an important role in building resilience to increasing extreme weather events, like droughts due to a changing climate. For example, tenure arrangements may regulate how water resources are equitably shared in times of water shortage. Finally, water tenure arrangements must protect the use rights of vulnerable and marginalized groups, including women, small farmers, fisherfolk, and indigenous people, particularly those who do not have access to land. Water is a vital resource. Everyone, including smallholder farmers, must be able to access and use it without excluding others, to sustain their livelihoods and to ensure that no one is left behind.
Thank you very much. I will take over from Benjamin and invite you to react a little bit to the video you have just seen that relate to water tenure, to get your understanding on your views on what is important when we speak of water tenure. So you have a link that just appeared in the chat. I invite you to click on it. It's a Mentimeter. And you will have a number of options that are proposed to you that you can select. So you could choose up to 5 options that are proposed. You can just decide that what are the main reasons water tenure is important. Could be to preserve an essential resource. It could be to protect the water resources for other uses, to solve conflict over water resources, to complement land rights, to regulate water pollution, to ensure an equitable distribution of water resources, to protect natural ecosystems, to build resilience against extreme weather events, to fight climate change, or to protect the freshwater rights of vulnerable group of indigenous people. So we invite you to just be a bit selective and just pick the 5 that are more important to you to answer to the question that is posted in the Mentimeter. What are the main reasons water tenure is important? And you may have different views. So we invite you to take a few minutes to do that, clicking on the Menti link that you see in the chat. So we'll leave a little few more seconds to give you enough time to just answer to the question. Or for those of you who have joined us just now, you're invited to, even if you haven't seen the video, to just share your views on what are the main reasons water tenure is important. And you have a number of options, and we invite you to choose 5 among the list that is proposed in the Mentimeter question. Okay, I think now we just, I think we could close that reaction on the Mentimeter. We have spent the 1 minute I was given to invite you to react. I thank you everyone for your answers, and I think you will be able to see the result that will be shared on the screen by Hector. So here you see, and obviously most of these answers were correct, but you see there is a large dominance of answers that look at conflict, solve conflict, protect natural resources, and protect the rights of the vulnerable people, ensure also an equitable distribution. And I think that's an element we are going to see in more detail in the follow-up element of the sessions. So I'd like to take you one step further now and highlight the fact that you do need to look a bit beyond just the term of water tenure. Our session is about water governance and tenure. So we have invited our colleagues to just help you understand how all this is connected. How are water tenure and water governance related? And how do they fit with the hydrological cycle? So we have Dubravka Božic, who is a program officer in the Governance and Policy Support Unit at FAO. She provides support and advice on institutional and political economy issues, and she's coordinating the FAO Governance Support Technical Network. We invited her to just share her views on an answer to that question of the connection between water tenure and governance. Dubravka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Domiti. Sophia, if you can just put, thank you. Next. So thanks for joining the session also from my part. And we have heard some numbers in the opening words given by Sasha Kawashima at the beginning of this session. And as she mentioned, this is a very dangerous path we are going to, because it actually leads to increasing trade-offs and tensions, and it's fueling disputes within different communities and even between them, and also contributes to regional instability in some areas of the world. And of course, this exacerbates already existing inequalities, food security, poverty, and resilience to climate change. So water governance and water tenure both are seen as critical for being able to address these complex water-related problems. So how do they relate to each other, and how do they fit with the hydrological cycle? Next, please. I have prepared this small graph. And when we talk about water governance, actually we forget often that water is governed by the laws of physics and geography. And what we are governing actually are human actions and decisions in relation to water resources that are actually available in a given country or a given territory. So water scarcity actually occurs when people use more water than is physically available, and the level of social and economic disruptions that result from the water scarcity in a given country, and also who will be mostly impacted by those disruptions, are directly related to the way water resources are allocated and distributed over the territory. So all along its cycle, up from the mountains down to the sea or the plain, the same drop of water is actually utilized within different forms of water tenure that have been developed over time with different people and different groups. As it was mentioned, and you have heard in the video that we just saw, water tenure defines who can access and use water, when, and also under which conditions. It always relates to a given water source, be it a spring or a lake or canal, a reservoir, a well or a borehole. And some of these forms of tenure, as we have heard, are formal, recognized by the statutory law. Some are informal, some are respected and enforced, and some are not. Within each of these water tenures and forms of water tenure, there are negotiations, contestations, also conflicts, compromises that are happening in relation to water, depending on power dynamics at place. Water tenure is embedded in water governance and actually depends on it for its respect and implementation. Governance is concerned with how we divide and allocate the available water resources among often competing users and users, be it agriculture, even within agriculture, between small-scale farmers, large farmers and agribusinesses, be it tourism, industry, drinking water, energy, name it. Governance is concerned thus with the wider social, economic, and political processes and forces that actually shape and determine different interactions between different forms of water tenure, interactions between different uses and users, and also determine what will be the status of the rules that regulate water use, whether they will be respected and enforced or not. Usually, in many countries, those with weak tenure will generally struggle to make their voices heard and to influence water governance or policy reforms in water or in agriculture or other sectors that will ultimately actually affect their access and use of water and their lives and livelihoods. So once again, understanding both water tenure and water governance and their relations and influence on water access and use will not only enable us to solve water problems, but to do that in a way that is sustainable, that is equitable and inclusive, and thus it will be much easier for us to ensure food security, nutrition for all, and also to strengthen climate resilience. Thank you. I will stop here and leave you for feedback, if any.
Thank you very much, Dubravka, and thank you also Julie Trottier, who has contributed as summarizing in few minutes what the relation between water governance and tenure. And I think it's quite complex, and I'm sure all of you haven't yet captured fully the intricacy of these two concepts. So that's why we are going to take you through very concrete example in the next segment, where we will have, we'll go around the world with some illustration. So I'll give the floor back to Benjamin for this.
Thank you very much, Domiti and Dubravka and Julie. Yes, now we will look at some very concrete cases. We have 6 cases in all, but we will not hear all 6 presentations after another, but they are divided in 2 blocks of 3 cases each, and after the first 3 presentations, we will have an opportunity in breakout groups to discuss what are the main takeaway messages from these presentations. After the 3 presentations, there will also be a short quiz to help you reflect on those cases that were presented. We will not have a Q&A session with the speakers, but of course you are welcome to post your questions in the chat, so the speakers can address them after the session, and also the email addresses of the speakers will be shared, so you can get in contact with them. So without further ado, I would like to present our first case on formal and informal water tenure, hybrid water law in sub-Saharan Africa, the case of South Africa from settler privilege to democratic water resource allocations. And our distinguished presenters are Barbara van Koppen. She's a scientist emerita with the International Water Management Institute based in Southern Africa, and John Deeney, who is research manager at the Water Research Commission, responsible for leadership in the water governance portfolio. Barbara and John, you have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you. We can't hear you yet. Can you unmute yourselves?
Oh, that one. So,
Okay, good. Hi,
thank
Barbara.
you also on behalf of John for this opportunity to share experiences about informal or customary water law and formal statutory water legislation. And then we focus on the permitting systems that exist in many countries in Africa and elsewhere, and also in South Africa, where they are called licensing systems. Implementation experiences in South Africa have learned that current licensing here fails to overcome the racially determined inequalities in access to water of the apartheid era. And the research and policy dialogues propose hybrid water law. And this includes targeted licensing, but also recognition of customary arrangements for managing water and other legal tools. So this presentation quickly focuses on issues in South Africa that we think are also relevant elsewhere and that align with the principles of the voluntary guidelines. Next slide, please. These two pyramids highlight the inequalities at stake. The handful of high impact users, mostly white, use most of the water resources, and data from the Department of Water quantify this. At the bottom of the pyramid are the millions of rural, small-scale and micro-scale water users. With self-financed water infrastructure for self-supply, they abstract water for domestic purposes, livestock, irrigation, other uses, and also for fisheries. Even aggregate volumes may remain small, but they are vital to realize constitutional rights to water and food and to further redress inequities from the apartheid past. Moreover, especially in South Africa's communal areas with customary land tenure, we find living customary community-based water tenure linked to land tenure. Communities see water in their social territories as a common good to be shared by all, including the vulnerable. Being born or being married in a community entitles to these water resources. And we find living arrangements to share water resources and mitigate conflicts, both internally and with neighboring communities. Obviously, licensing the hundreds of thousands small-scale users who would be obliged to apply for a license is logistically impossible and indeed boils down to administrative injustice. The micro-scale users who are exempted from the obligation to apply for a license remain invisible for government and have hardly any defense against encroachments by license holders. So what is the solution debated in South Africa now? Next slide, please. That solution is hybrid water law, and it differentiates. For the few high-impact users at the top of the pyramid here, licensing remains the best tool to regulate and enforce conditions. An example of such condition is the prohibition of trading licenses. According to the Department of Water nowadays, if you don't use the water, you don't need it, so the resource goes back to the state as custodian of water resources for reallocation to the have-nots. And another example of important licensing processes is during the planning and design of new large-scale infrastructure. For example, a dam for Chinese or other foreign or national companies and plantations. This strict planning process, applying for a license, should be transparent and participatory. And all existing users that might be negatively affected, and especially customary water users, need to be protected, informed, freely consent, and as needed compensated. And then
You have one more minute.
And lastly, in contrast, the legal tools at the bottom of the pyramid that are debated nowadays seek to support and empower. This includes a recognition of customary water tenure. Another tool is to prioritize the micro-scale users exempted from the obligation to apply for a license, as already happens in some countries. And the most bottom-up legal tool is the highest priority for water resources allocation that meet everybody's domestic uses. So different from the service, the infrastructure. Here we talk about the highest priority for the water resources that flow into the infrastructure. And it is already in the law in South Africa, but it's not enforced. Moreover, this core minimum should align with the Constitution and hence include a similar highest priority for water resources to realize their rights to food. Well, with these glimpses of South Africa, we look forward to compare with similar debates elsewhere, including the voluntary guidelines. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for this presentation from Southern Africa. We now go to the Middle East, where we will discuss allocation water rights in Jordan. And Amgad El-Mahdi is with us today. He is the regional representative of the MENA region of the International Water Management Institute. Before joining IMI, he was the head of the Water Resources Section and chief supervising hydrologist at the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. Amgad, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ben, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. What I will try to do in the coming 4 minutes is really to share with you the story of how the water being allocated in Jordan, with the focus on Jordan River basin, that it's like a transboundary basin shared by different countries like Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. And if you look at that figure, I know it looks complex, but in total, it's like 175 million cubic meter that can actually be allocated within Jordan for different use. And if you look at the system, it's really very much a closed system, except with the interbasin transfer. And the key issue in that basin is really the water scarcity issue and also the groundwater depletion condition, which resulted in declining the storage and also promote the use of the treated wastewater. If we look at the level of use, we will see the agriculture sector use between 50% to 60%, the domestic around 40%, and industrial around 4 to 5%. However, if we look at the biggest user at the agriculture with the farmers, it only contribute like 3% in Jordan GDP. And that result in unproductive really use of water. But the water being allocated within that basin by the authority like Jordan River Authority that divide the basin into like 53 development area. And each area divided into like a farm unit as it's being called. And that farm unit, it's like 35 dönum or 3.5 hectare or 7 faddan. And for each unit, the water gets allocated based on the crop water consumption, plus the availability, of course, of the water supply during that season. So the authority decide and do that calculation or the estimated calculation and allocate that water. And in normal condition, that allocation almost less than what the farmer actually need, between 20 to 25%. And that resulted in a conflict between the farmers and also the authority, and make farmers start to illegally really manipulate the system. And that manipulation could be by deliberately really damaging the water meters, or playing with the valve, or exchanging the flow limiting devices, or even try to illegal take water from the groundwater system. So the key challenge really in that basin is how really to ensure the sustainable and reliable delivery of water to meet the demand for the farmers, plus of course protecting the environmental flow that become more complex and problematic problem. Next.
Amgad, you have 1 more minute.
Yeah. So the key problem, as we can see here, it's beyond really the water allocation. It's coming as political, because it's a transboundary basin, social, the refugee, the people move between countries, and also the neighbor countries. And the authority tried to meet that through like using treated wastewater by allocate more of that. But if we look at the farmer always reject that, because most of the crops there are really grapes and citrus, and they need a low salinity of water. So the farmers keep pushing different measures and different needs in terms of like law enforcement, investment in different infrastructure, as water harvest, and also use the treated wastewater as a complementary rather than like a main source of water. However, also the farmers are not willing really to invest in any water saving technology because again, the value of water use or the operational cost, it's really less than 1% of the operational cost. So the water tariff, it's very low. That's why it doesn't really encourage. And that conflict is still there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amgad, for this very comprehensive and short presentation. We will be able to discuss this in the further discuss this in the round. And without further ado, I would like to introduce the third speaker of our first block of presentations, Jessica Trell, who is a senior attorney and director of the International Water and Africa programs of the Environmental Law Institute, based in Harare, Zimbabwe. And Jessica will give us a presentation on gender and water tenure. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining us today for this important session on water governance and water tenure. Today, I have the pleasure of briefly highlighting some of the key issues related to the gender-based aspects of water tenure and provide some evidence-based recommendations on how we might improve the governance of water tenure for enhanced gender equity. Women around the world have important water management responsibilities, unique water needs, and differentiated priorities for water use and management. Globally, women and girls bear the main burden of unpaid household work, including water collection. And they also play critical roles in food production and water management for both household and productive uses. Women constitute about 43% of the world's agricultural labor force, but they're much less likely than men to have control over their land and water resources for these purposes. Moreover, satisfying the water and sanitation needs of women and girls is a critical aspect of achieving both positive reproductive health outcomes and increasing educational opportunities for girls. Next slide, please. Yet, despite the broad international recognition of women's distinctive water needs, knowledge, and management skills, and despite the clear evidence that we have that women's secure tenure facilitates improved land and water management outcomes and contributes to broader family food security, children's health, and increased sustainable agricultural productivity, men continue to dominate land and water governance and decision-making at all levels. Strengthening women's water tenure, which is comprised of the bundle of rights that are most essential to women's water security, including use and governance, is one clear pathway for achieving not just gender equality, but also for achieving multiple sustainable development and climate goals. Research demonstrates that secure tenure rights enhance women's ability to participate and hold positions of authority in community and national governance institutions, further enabling them to advocate for gender equitable land and water resource management, tenure, and governance. Next slide, please. So how can we strengthen women's water tenure to achieve these goals? I want to share 4 potential avenues that are based on the research of the Environmental Law Institute and our partners. First, there's a critical need to more clearly recognize and protect women's water rights in national water legislation. In a recent study of Indigenous and community-based water tenure undertaken by ELI and our partner, the Rights and Resources Initiative, we found that among 39 water tenure regimes identified across 15 countries, less than 1/3 specifically recognized women's water use or governance rights. The fact that water laws are generally gender blind like this in practice means they often reinforce existing gender inequities and discriminatory cultural norms. Second, it's important to recognize that women's water tenure rights in many countries hinges on the interface between customary laws and government issued laws that may or may not recognize those customary rights. And we just heard about this in South Africa. The alignment of customary and legislative water tenure is a complex and culturally sensitive undertaking, but it's critical that that recognition is done in a way that provides a legal floor of protection for women's rights so that both legislative and customary tenure systems effectively respect and protect those rights.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Ben. Meaningfully addressing existing gender inequities in water tenure requires a careful unpacking of the diverse legal and practical linkages between women's water and land tenure rights. In the same analysis of community water tenure, we found over 60% of tenure regimes have what we are calling a legal land-water nexus, where water tenure rights are legally dependent on recognized land and/or forest rights. And this is critical because less than 15% of landholders around the world are women, and women own a significantly smaller share of land than men. So the water tenure rights of many women can therefore not be adequately safeguarded if their land and forest rights are not also legally recognized and secure. And this implies a strong need not just to strengthen those tenure rights, but also to ensure that land, forest, and water laws are better harmonized, because where they fail to speak to each other or even contradict one another, women's water tenure can be left vulnerable to challenges. Finally, it's critical that we improve the evidence base for securing women's land and water tenure rights through applied research that further elucidates the drivers of existing tenure inequities and more clearly demonstrates the positive livelihoods, food security, and climate resilience outcomes of women's secure water and land tenure to inform more evidence-based policymaking and decision-making across sectors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess, for your great effort in putting a lot of substance in such a short time and finishing just on time. Much appreciated. Wow, that was very intense. Three very interesting and different cases from all over the world. So let's take a step back and reflect on those cases. And I would like to invite you now to answer three questions, which you will find in the Mentimeter poll that has just been posted in the chat. Please go on that site, and there are three questions, one for each case. Regarding the first case, formal and informal water tenure, hybrid water law in sub-Saharan Africa, we would like to know from you, what is the relevance of hybrid water law in countries with permit systems and significant proportions of people governed by indigenous or customary land and resource tenure? Is it irrelevant or somewhat relevant, equally relevant or more relevant? Please put your opinion and judge. The second case, water allocation rights in Jordan. What, in your opinion, is the root of the problem in the North Jordan Valley? Is it more cultural and social problems, refugees and instability of the neighboring countries, or political, legislative and tribal structures? Check all that you think apply. And finally, regarding the third case, gender and water tenure, which factors are most important in improving water tenure security for women and girls? Also check all that apply. Is it either secure land tenure for women and girls, or gender-specific provisions in water legislation, harmonization of legal tenure provisions, clear and equitable inheritance and marriage laws, institutional quotas for women's participation, or enforceable non-discrimination legislation? So I'll give you another minute to ponder on these questions and put your answers before we go into the breakout rooms to reflect a bit more. Thank you very much for taking time to reflect on these questions. This survey will, of course, remain open. So if you want to take more time, you're welcome to do so. We would like now invite you to join us in a discussion in small breakout groups to discuss what got your attention in these three cases. And we will give you 7 minutes to discuss this question. You will now be put in breakout groups automatically, and after the after the 8 minutes, sorry, it's not 7, it's 8 minutes, you will be put back automatically in the plenary. Each breakout group has a facilitator who will be able to answer any questions you may have. And please, Hector, go ahead with the breakout rooms, and we'll see you back here in the plenary in 8 minutes. If you have any problems with the breakout rooms, don't worry. There will be always somebody here in the plenary to put you into a breakout rooms if that does not work. Hector, please. Okay, welcome back to the plenary. I hope everybody is back, and you had some good discussions in the group. We will now we would like to know here what you discussed, and for this we would like you to open the chat of this Zoom meeting. If you click below on the chat, a lot of you have already used this, and please put in the chat what any of the main messages or takeaway messages, what you have learned from any of those 3 cases that we've discussed, and please take a minute to write down a statement, and then after but do not press enter until I say so. So then afterwards we will see all these messages coming into the chat, and you will be able to read them. So please take a minute now. Please take a minute to write, but do not press enter until I say so. Okay, another 10 seconds. Okay. Now, please share your messages. Very nice. I see a lot of messages coming through that you've discussed. This is very nice. We will not go through them now, but of course they will be recorded and will be part of the report that will be coming out of this session. So all of these statements are very important to us. Thank you very much. We will now go to the second round of presentations, and I invite Domiti to take over and moderate this part. Domiti, over to you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. I'm very pleased to take you through the next round of presentation that are going to be also extremely interesting. And we have also the challenge for the speakers to just meet the 5 minutes limit. The process will be the same that was done now with the first segment. So I don't think I need to repeat, but very briefly for those who have joined us just now, we will first listen to the 3 presentations. You'll be given a chance to react a little bit on each of those presentations using a quiz, and then we'll go and break out rooms to discuss in more detail. And some of you will meet with the speakers. Others will have a chance to discuss on similar cases, meeting other of the participants. So let me start immediately by introducing the first speaker of our second block. I'm very pleased to welcome Hans Komarkesh, who is the Center Director of the Water Infrastructure and Sustainable Energy Futures, and also a senior lecturer at the Nelson Mandela African Institution for Science and Technology, Arusha in Tanzania. And he's going to speak about living customary water tenure. Hans, the floor is yours, and Sophia, please share the presentation.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So I will take you to Tanzania and talk about living customary water tenure systems that is practiced in the area. So in the Tanzania specifically, I will take you to the area which is marked there in the map, the Pangani Basin, but also more focusing in one area of the Kikuletwa catchment. Because of time, I've indicated sources where these articles have been published. So for future reference, you can look at that. But specifically what I'm drawing your attention here is that in the case which I'm presenting, there are formal permit systems or allocation practices that are in place, but somehow also ignore already existing living customary arrangements that are very much adaptive, built around hydro solidarities and among others. So in the next slide, I will elaborate a little bit more. Next slide, please. So in this sections where my case study is about is that you have a section, a geography whereby smallholder farmers are both upstream and downstream of large commercial farmers, but they share a common stream. And in this case, this common stream actually, the setup is actually something that also originated during the colonial time, in that during the colonial time, settlers came into the middle section of the stream and develop land for agriculture, while smallholder farmer develop irrigation scheme upstream, as indicated in the sections, and downstream as indicated in the section. So just a system has actually developed in a way that there are many water abstraction from the river systems. And you can see from the left diagram that a number of farmers or intakes have been built on a river network, to the extent that sometimes the river dries up when it reaches downstream, which can be seen in the permits in the the right side of the photos. What is evident from here is that when you look at it only from the permit systems, which actually take long to recognize that maybe water systems are overlocated, it leads to either increased conflict and increased competitions, or at times a detrimental effect to the ecosystems within the river network. Next slide. So to blend into this process where farmers have been practicing different form of water allocations, and given the emerging systems where government has put in place formal system of water allocations, that farmers have been able to continue to practice systems that would allow them to cope with those new challenges. And what I'm showing here is that on the left-hand side, you'll see that cases where permits have been issued, but still farmers look at it from a more rotational system. So upstream, for instance, use water from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., while downstream use water from 2 p.m. to 5 a.m. In that case, you'll see that the midstream, you have midstream farmers that are having permits. So in a way, they will have to conform, given that there is water shortage. But if you look at it from a system whereby we only follow the formal permit system, there would not be a case where water will be enough for the entire systems. On the other side, farmers have also adopted systems whereby a dipstick, for instance, is used to indicate levels in the different canals at a particular time. So the gentleman on the right-hand side shows you he has a stick that has very clear marking, and that clear marking can be used to decide who's right or what level is required for a particular user at a particular location. And sometimes some of these things are not only like defined in the way customary arrangement has been defined in the past, that they kind of fixing time. they also get transformed. Some of these arrangements get written up into small papers that indicate clearly when are you supposed to start working.
Hans,
or start
1 minute.
water. Thank you.
Hans, 1
Next.
minute.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So from this system is that you see that the living customary arrangement here does not mean that things are fixed in time, that people keep passing their tradition from time to time, but they also get remodeled to meet the changing needs of the society or the context, maybe induced droughts or increased scarcity, which is introduced by overlocation. But there is a very strong component in that. In doing that, they recognize that there's interdependence among themselves. What I summarize here is that if there's not enough water, you can't blame everybody. And this came from one of the large users that actually recognize these conditions, that you need to be able to share water in a different way other than on the paper-based aspect. The last one is that it is very accommodative systems that allow system to be fair, not necessarily fair, but a strike over dialogue in the water allocation system. So this is what I would characterize as a living customary arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans. I think it was, you succeeded in a very short time to just give really a full picture of a system that I think will just ring a bell in many cases, and other people will feel, similarities with their realities. Let me now take you a little further. We are going to cross the Atlantic and just go to Latin America. And we'll have Soledad that is going to, Soledad Bastidas, who is a senior policy officer in the Agricultural Land and Water Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. And she's going to, in 5 minutes, succeed speaking of a very large area, the water governance in the Andes, and cover the analysis of Bolivia, Chile, and Peru. So Soledad, the floor is yours for this challenge.
Thank you. Good morning or good evening, everyone. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Yes, Latin America and the Caribbean holds a large share of the total fresh water. Much of this is located in the Andes, which is the main source of the Amazon basin. In despite of this volume, water is unevenly distributed and there is a heterogeneous spatial and seasonal water scarcity. In 2019, the FAO Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean conducted an analysis of water governance in agricultural basins in 6 countries. In the Andes, from north to south, the studies were done in the Lurín Basin in Peru, the Guadalquivir Basin in Bolivia, and the Tinguiririca Basin in Chile. Here are all the links to these studies as well as to a policy brief that was produced. Next, please. Several findings about the policy, legal, and institutional framework were produced from these studies, as well as challenges and recommendations. Here, I will only mention shortly some of them that illustrate the situation, highlighting that, for instance, in Peru, strong differences in water availability and quality are found at different altitudes. In Bolivia, 80 to 85% of the total water is used for agriculture. In Chile, extreme water shortage situation led to the expansion of agriculture to new areas such as slopes. One of the key common challenges is the need to strengthen integrated watershed management, considering in one side adequate governance mechanisms, as we find a very complex institutional setting in each basin. There are conflicts between water organizations, canals associations, but also between different sector users. There exists competition between sectors, between agriculture, hydroelectricity, industry and mining, and also service water sector. These interactions might differ, as explained before, depending on the location and depending if it's upstream, downstream, or at different altitudes. We need also to consider the interactions between water availability and land use dynamics. As pointed out in Chile and in Peru, water shortage and water scarcity is leading to agricultural expansion to new areas such as slopes. And this also entails the expansion of water demand, but this expansion should be based on water availability. If water productivity and water efficiency are not improved, the expansion of agriculture will create a vicious circle, deepening water scarcity and increasing conflicts between users. In this sense, responsible governance should also regulate the expansion of water demand and its provision, ensuring water and food security. Next, please. There are a number of policy recommendations that were produced from these studies. I'm not going to go through because time will end, but they deal with coordination mechanisms, policy enforcement, tenure arrangements, participation, technologies, incentives, and the creation of financing mechanisms such as watershed funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soledad. In fact, you still had a little bit of time available, but I think you did a very good job in presenting the complex situation with different countries and that have different governance issues. But you highlighted the fact that you may have a lot of water, but not a lot of water physically available for uses in different places and time. So let me take you to the third cases, and then you will have a chance to just react on these different example. And the third cases will take you back to Africa, and we will have here a case on tenure, water tenure assessment in Rwanda. And I'm going to just give the floor to Yvonne Abiyoni-Zeye, who is a sociologist for FAO Rwanda, researcher in social science and including in gender and development issues, governance and public health. Will also worked with Bonaventure and Zeye Mana, who is a legislative drafter, legal practitioner, and also a consultant in natural resources. So Yvonne and Bonaventure, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We are very happy to be given this opportunity to present our preliminary findings. And for the sake of time, my colleague Bonaventure is going to present on our behalf. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. As mentioned before, we are actually conducting an assessment related to water tenure and governance in Rwanda. And the purpose is to know how the community access water and the way the law and the policy are being applied in relation with the water resources. So far, we have completed our desk work, and we are currently conducting our field assessment, where we have to meet with different people and different water users, so that we can know how the water is being used and how is being assessed by the community. Our geography in Muvumba catchment, which is the part of the Nile Basin located in north of the eastern province of Rwanda, where the Muvumba catchment, the big part is located in Nyagatare, which is mainly used for agriculture and livestock purposes. We do have also Yanze catchment, which covers, which is used within city of Kigali, and in Rulindo district, which is in northern province. Also, we do have different population who are using the water from those catchment, and as I mentioned, we have to meet with those water users so that we can know how the policy, laws, and whatever are being implemented. Next. Okay. So concerning the findings, the water tenure in Rwanda so far, or on a legal perspective, it is very important to mention that water resources are governed by a law. We have a written law which governs the water resources in its tenure and use. And the same law provided that the water tenure belongs to the state, and the law do not recognize the customary water. The water use requires a permit, but for the domestic use, there is no requirement for the permit. People are allowed to use water without requesting for the permit whenever it's about the domestic use. And the water is mostly used in irrigation activities, livestock, and coffee washing stations, mining activities, as well as aquaculture and the environment protection. And when we look at the governance, it's very important to mention that in Rwanda, the water governance started by the high-level institution, which is the Office of the Prime Minister, which is the institution in charge of supervising all activities related to water resources, and is the same Prime Minister's office which is supervising both the ministry having water resources in attribution and the institution in charge of water resources, which is the Rwanda Water Board. And the same institution is the one in charge of issuing a permit and to monitor the use of those permits in relation with what is provided for the legal provision. Apart from those institutions, we do have also the National Water Consultative Committee, we do have Catchment Committee, we do have also other committees which are located at district and the sector level, and at the lowest level, we do have the most important organization, which is Water Users Organization, which is established at the scheme level. And also this Water Users Organization is the one in charge to collect water fee, to manage and to maintain water.
Bonaventure, you have less than 1 minute. Huh?
Yes, please. And also, as we are still conducting our assessment, we are in information gathering for further analysis, and we do hope that we have another opportunity to present what are the findings at the end of this field activities. Yeah, I think that all we do have in relation with the assessment we are currently conducting. Yeah, we thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very promising exercise, and we look forward the results once you will finish your analysis. So I think now we have heard 3 cases that took you from Africa to Latin America, and we'll have the same as we had in the previous segment. We'll invite you to answer to a quiz. So we thank all the speakers. You will have 1 minute to answer. So I think the quiz will be posted on Mentimeter in the chat. So please click on the question, and I will take you. You'll have 2 minutes to answer. So for the first case, living customary water tenure in Tanzania, we'd like to just reflect on what are the 3 keywords that capture the impact of living adaptive customary water tenure. It could be positive or negative impact. For the case in the Andes, we'd like you to think of the situation when water becomes scarce. Which element seems crucial to be taken in consideration for responsible governance? And you can check all that apply, and you have different options: integrated land and water management, institutional coordination at different levels, tenure regimes depending on ecosystem attitude, and prioritization of water uses among sector. The third case, that is a tenure assessment in Rwanda, the question is, does the legal regime in Rwanda recognize customary water tenure? From what you heard in this initial assessment, do you think yes, customary water tenure is recognized and enforced? Or yes, water tenure, water resources belong to the states and the community is allowed to use without condition? Or C, no, water resources belong to the state and their use is subject to water permit except for domestic use. Or D, no water rights are granted and only landowner have access to water. So please click on the Mentimeter and answer and spend, you have the next 1 minute to answer to those questions. So you should see the Mentimeter link in the chat. If you haven't opened the chat, click on the chat to see it. So still a few seconds more. So to answer to the 3 quiz questions on Tanzania, the Andes, and Rwanda. And you'll see the live results posted also in the chat after if you want to check what came out from all the participants. So I think we'll just leave it open for those who haven't finished, but I think because of time, we'll continue moving. So we thank you for providing your answers, and we'll go in a second breakout group. And again, you will be with different people normally. Some of you will be with the speakers, so you can ask more detailed questions. And again, we'd like you to reflect on what got your attention on these 3 new cases that just bring very different issues that from the one we heard before. So Hector, thanks to just send everybody in the breakout rooms, and we look forward to seeing you in 8 minutes back in the main room. So thank you very much. I think we are slowly coming back all together. Somehow the time stopped, but we were still in the room. We were not leaving. So maybe Hector, you have to find a way to just get us back when the time stops. So I welcome all of you, and I think we are going to do the same that we just did in the PREVEX segment, just because we are many and it's difficult to give a voice to everybody if we all speak. So we'll invite you to also just share. So we'll do the same exercise that we did before. Write in the chat your reflection, what came out from you, from your discussion in the group, but wait before sending it, that I give you the sign. So we'll give to everybody 1 minute to just write their reflection in the chat, or if you had additional question, please, you don't hesitate to write it so that people, the three speakers can answer to you in the chat. So what got your attention in these 3 cases, write it in the chat and wait my indication before sending it. So just, I'll give you 1 minute to write, and I'm going to just measure the time with my telephone. So I can, so wait before pushing the button. So keep your note for you for the moment until you just post it, and then we'll have a storm of chat. So the question is, what got your attention on the 3 cases? Any element of discussion that you had in the breakout session? Don't hesitate, or any additional question or concern or comment you wish to make. Don't hesitate to write it now in the chat. So I think now I invite you all to just post your thinking. That's a time when the storms is happening, and it's very nice to see that there has been a lot of discussion and reflection, and so you may continue. Don't stop now. You can just post it directly if you hadn't yet pushed the button. Go ahead, because I think I will have now to hand over to my colleague Benjamin. I think we will have a small break now. I mean, it's a chance for you to maybe freshen up. We are going to have a very brief break. So if you had additional questions, comments, you can use that time to write in the chat, or I invite you to just go and grab water, coffee, tea, a small technical stop, and we'll just resume just 5 minutes, not more, and then we'll enter in an exciting second segment where we're going to enter and discuss benefits and impact of water tenure and governance assessment. And so we hope you'll stay with us and after this short break. Nice countryside walk to refresh, and you are coming back with a lot of energy for the second segment of our session. In the second segment, we'd like to just give you more chance to share your experience, your views, and so we are going to just discuss in a word cafe process. And we'll have a group debate where we are going to have be again divided in different groups, but larger group that we had before, with a facilitator. The facilitator will guide you through the discussion and will take notes on documents so that we can really capture the richness of your discussion. And there will be a master rapporteur that will just synthesize the result, and we thank very much Barbara van Kampen from IMI, who had agreed to take these challenging tasks. So the debates that we are going to have now will try to just take you one step further. I mean, we have looked at different cases across the world. We just there are a lot of challenges, I think, that may seem common to you, even from other countries. And we'd like to get you to reflect on what should be included in guidelines for responsible governance of water tenure. I mean, what are these voluntary guidelines? Let's illustrate with an example. In 2012, the FAO Committee on Food Security endorsed the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fishery, and forest in the context of the national food security. These guidelines define the principle for responsible governance of tenure of natural resources. So they just introduce elements like transparency, participation, equity, justice, equality of gender, and accountability. But water was not included in the VGGT. I mean, that's a short name of these voluntary guidelines, because no agreement could be reached between the states on the inclusion of water resources. So after 10 years that passed since these endorsements of this VGGT, and government, international organizations, civil society, and academia recognize those guidelines as a very useful instrument to analyze and address issues of governance of land, forest, and fishery tenure. So against that background, we think it's about time that a new discussion emerged to see if we could also have a similar instrument for water resources. So now you have a role to just imagine that you are called as an expert to participate in first consultation of these guidelines on water tenure. So based on your experience, the case presented, the outcome of the first rounds of discussions, maybe you could think and reflect with the facilitator that would guide you on what are the main elements that should be included in if we think of guidelines for responsible governance of water tenure, to whom they should be addressed, and how we can, water security, food security, and climate resilience can be addressed, because I mean, we want to look at a different trade-off and how do you address this. So facilitator will just take you through these steps and keep track of your comments and suggestions. So I invite you now all to join the breakout rooms that Hector will send us in, and just wish you a very active discussion. And we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody. I think in our group, we just started getting warm with the discussion, and then we were sent back to the main room. But I think it just, so it means that there is still scope for more discussion, and because I think we just started only with the first point. We have still 2 questions that are left to discuss. But as time is running, so I understand that we have to respect the program and just make sure that we don't pass the time. So I think we'll just now take advantage of the next step. I think all of you have discussed, even briefly started discussing on how we just maybe think of sustainable, voluntary guidelines on water tenure. And I'm sure that you have new ideas that came to your mind as you were listening to your colleagues speaking. You may not have had a chance to speak yet. So what the purpose of the exercise was really to start the conversation. And we realized that the time in a session like this is too short to really, do it in completely and in a satisfactory way. So this is just the first step of a process that will continue over the year, and will give you, in the next few slide, the final slide will give you a little bit an indication of the next steps. But what we'd like to hear from you is, what is your takeaway message? And for this, we'll just give you, I think, a chance. I think we still have time, maybe to just discuss again together on the takeaway message, and then you will have a form that will enable you to report your feedback. So I think depending on the time, Sophia, Sophia, your microphone is muted. Depending on the time, can you let me know?
We were thinking of doing, let the participants think about the key takeaway messages of this session, and then share some of them will share their experiences, instead of doing the breakout rooms, because we have 20 minutes left and the session will be over.
Okay. So that was because we have to just manage time, and the session will stop abruptly at the end, so we won't be able to just use extra time. So please reflect on the question. I think Sophia will be able to post it again on the screen. So what are your takeaway message from what you have heard? You had 6 cases that were presented. You had a brief discussion in a cafe format. And so what would you comment, take away? It could be on some cases that were particularly interesting and you'd like to know more. It could be recommendation for the going towards voluntary guidelines. So I'll let you reflect. And I think very soon Hector will post the form on the chat, so that you can, yes, you can just use a short survey. It's already posted to close the session today. So in the short survey, you will be able to write your comments. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that in the short survey. So I hope you have already started filling the short survey and put your comments and feedback, and also maybe suggestion for the future. I mean, as I indicated, this is a first session where we started discussing this very complex topic. So we'll need to repeat, and this can be repeated in different contexts and formats, and hopefully face to face in the future, if we can. So I think I'll give, there is a few more seconds for reaction. I don't know if we could take 1 or 2 persons who may want, you can raise your hand, who may want to reflect, they want to speak in the plenary. If you have anybody who wants to raise a hand, and then we could just get you to speak loud instead of only writing. It will have to be a very short and punchy comments. So I'm looking if there's anybody raising a hand. No hand. So I think, anyway, if some of you are interested to share your views, you could still do it, but I'm going to start with calling upon 3 people that we have asked to listen carefully to what has been happening in that session and just share their reflection at the end of the session. So let me... So I'd like to just invite, I think we have first, I think Al-Sad and Dayi Zeye is not available, if I understood well. So I'd like to ask Tanja Liu. She's Policy Officer for Climate Change and Environment at the FAO Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. And Tanja, if you could in 2 minutes, just share your kind of highlights from the session.
Thank you, Damiti. Yes, I'll try to be very brief. I think from all the discussions and the presentations, it's clear that, you know, without the water tenure and water governance issues working together with all the stakeholders, with all the water users, with government, with farmers, with whoever is using the water, that needs to be brought together. I think we made it clear also in the discussion groups. We cannot meet, you know, the SDG goals without the water tenure and water governance objectives being met. We cannot meet food security, water scarcity, and also climate change. Adapting to climate change, making communities, making countries more resilient to climate change. We need to ensure that water tenure and water governance are complementarily being addressed and being discussed with a wide range of stakeholders. I think lastly, I just want to indicate that it was great to see different views around the world. So I think learning from each other is another key takeaway message, because our problems and challenges, as we have seen, are all the same. We're not talking about different, different challenges. We're talking about different geographic scope, but the challenges at the core are the same. So I'm happy to see that, you know, also within FAO, we work together between the regions, and perhaps this can be more improved. We can, you know, enhance this a little bit more. But we have been working together. We have been working on water tenure assessment guidelines being made available in our region in Spanish, and to show that, you know, there are lessons learned from other regions that we can take away. I think this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies, I forgot the microphone. I think it's a very good conclusion, and that we share. And I'd like, we'll give the chance to the other to just add on to what you said. We have Ananda Lal Nayiyakara, the National Legal Consultant for the FAO office in Sri Lanka in the Knowing Water Better project. So I'd like to just ask Ananda Lal to just share also the highlights. Anandalal, you can take the floor. Yes, please, Anandalal, I see that you're on. Please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now? My mic wasn't responding.
Yes, yes, we hear you fine and clear.
All right, okay. So for me, this was, I'm looking at the water governance and engaged in a water governance study for FAO in Sri Lanka. And clearly, this is a novel area of study that we're looking at, because we're used to land tenure where the rules are very clear and the rules are static. They've been there for a long period of time, and they've been adjudicated upon, and they are very clear as to what the rights and responsibilities are. But when it comes to water, water itself behaves differently, because clearly it is more mobile, and it does not respect the boundaries that are set by humans, and deteriorates much faster if the conditions are not conducive. And also, clearly, the availability of water is subject to spatial and seasonal availability. So we're looking at, when we're talking of water governance, we need to have a framework that can take into account these different dynamics that are there, and not be static, but can respond to especially with the climate change exigencies that can come up, that can respond to the needs that will come up in the future, and develop a system where the basic rules are there, but will be tailored to the local conditions. So for me, this was a critical opportunity to see how the different countries, the different jurisdictions where the water pressures are different, apply, and also to see how unless the management regime is dynamic enough to take into account the different conditions, and unless it is applied in a transparent, accountable manner, how fast the system can disintegrate also. So for me, there's much that I have gained, which will feed into the study that I'm doing right now in Sri Lanka, and hopefully once we have the final result, that will reflect the learning from these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anandalal. I think it's just very good that I think both of you already just provide very positive feedback on the follow-up that we need. And I am sure that our third speaker, Julie Trottier, who is the Director of Research at the National Center for Scientific Research in France, teaching critical political ecology at Water at Sciences Po Paris, and working with the FAO NENA, the WEPS NENA project on water governance, will just also add to what both of you have said. Julie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone for all your participation. What really struck me through all the presentations was that I was seeing two different underlying definitions of what is water efficiency and what is water productivity. There seems to be one definition that usually is used within a top-down approach when a state tries to maximize water efficiency. It seems then the definition is, let's maximize crop per drop, let's maximize the production of export-oriented food using the water we have. Whereas when we look at the bottom-up approach, when it's a grassroots form of tenure, the definition of water efficiency strikes me as quite different. It's more, let's make sure everyone has enough water to have enough food. And that may not mean maximizing food production overall. So it's equity versus production, basically. And it was extremely interesting to see, for example, Barbara's talking about the hybrid water law, where you could see that this law was trying to accommodate for both definitions. And when we were listening to Hans's talk about Tanzania, very clearly he was showing different groups of users that were deploying different definitions of water efficiency, even though it may be implicit, not explicitly carried out. And also when I was listening to Amgad's talk about Jordan, there I was seeing the definition of water efficiency that seems to be more the state, used in state circles. So it seems to me if we go back to basics, to those definitions, we can maybe find compromises between the different forms of water tenure that have to do trade-offs in order to achieve a better water governance. So that would be my takeaway from this workshop. You're muted, Domiti.
Sorry, thank you very much. And I think it's a very good summary and good element that you bring out. And we'll have a chance. We just noticed that we have Al-Sad who just joined us, who is from the Water Board of Rwanda. So I think it would be interesting to just have also a vision from a manager of water after listening to this series of presentation. Al-Sad, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Domtil. Thank you, all participants. Just as a reflection from my side, of course, also in Rwanda. So we are lucky from as we have NOWAT project, FAO and Rwandan government partnership project to conduct water tenure and governance in Rwanda, as it will be a good tool to implement the existing laws and regulations related to water management and water allocation in general, as currently we have a water permitting system as a tool to manage the water allocation. So this water tenure and governance will help in also in efficient implementation of the existing laws and regulations, of course, in water allocation, without leaving behind the vulnerable people and small farmers in general. So it will contribute a bit. Even this session, I learned a lot from the presentation and the other sessions we had in the breakout sessions, how we will better implement the existing laws related to water permitting and water allocation. So thank you very much. Without taking a long time, it's very useful to be with you. Thank you.
Domiti, you're muted.
Again, I thank you to all four of you. I think it was a very difficult task we gave you to listen and just in 2 minutes, just bring out the highlight of what you listened. And I think you all brought very complimentary points and very useful. So, but I think we are just in the last 5 minutes. I don't know if there's one speaker that somebody who wants really have a burning point they want to raise. Otherwise, we just we'll just come to tell you what next, because I mean, obviously, it's the beginning of a conversation. Such a complex topic cannot be addressed only in 2.5 hours. And we have, I mean, seen only 6 cases, but I think there will be so many more that will be interesting to look at, to just see the diversity and just learn from. So I'd like if you could share the slide on the what next, Sophia, and we'll just invite you to just continue with us in the next few months. We'll just obviously, we have about a 10-year Monday webinar series that just has already done 10 sessions, and you are welcome to just see the past, but it'll start again the 13th of September. So if you're interested, please don't hesitate to register, send your email through the chat, for example. We have the 5th Arab Water Forum that is organized in Dubai, where we'll have a session on water auditing, water governance. we'll have the Cairo Water Week that will also just have a series of sessions where the question of water accounting and auditing will be discussed. The IWRA World Water Congress, where we also, with partners from this session, will organize a session again on water accounting and governance. The Land and Water Days of FAO planned in December, where we'll just look in more detail in the tenure question. And obviously the 9th World Water Forum, where I expect a lot of you will be there to just discuss further. So if you are interested in just being informed regularly of what is happening on those topics of accounting, governance, and tenure, I invite you to join the D group, and you will have access also to past video and recording of the session that were specifically on water tenure or water governance. So I think I would like also to conclude that session with this final slide and thank all of you, all the speakers that have accepted to play the difficult role of speaking in 4, 5, 3, 2 minutes. And it's always very difficult, but it allowed us to just in a very limited time to see, understand a little better the concept. Thank you also of the producer of the video that I think is in 5 minutes allowed us to just give really a good idea of what water tenure is about. And Julie and Dubravka for making an effort of just summarizing for us the link between water governance and tenure. And I think we are in the last 2 minutes. I'd like to thank all the organizers, and a special thanks to somebody who has been acting in the background very efficiently. So Sofia Ramirez, that has been just leading us. And I think we have to compliment because she had so many people to deal with. It was not easy. And Hector for managing the technical aspect of this session. And I hope you all enjoyed as much as we have.
And and a big thank you, of course, Domiti, to you for leading us so expertly and on time through this program. It was really wonderful and a lot of fun. And boy, how fast can 2.5 hours go? Maybe to conclude, I would like to point your attention that, of course, you are able to give us further thoughts. Sophia has just shared a link to a form that you can access even after this session to give us your feedback. And we look very much forward to hearing from you on your final conclusions, your recommendations, the way forward, and also feedback on how you found the session, what we did well, and what we can do better next time. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the World Water Week. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, colleagues.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye and see you soon.
Yes, definitely.
I guess you will send me all everything so I can.
Yes.
Of course.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all. And Sophia, fantastic. Also the presentation, the way.
Yeah.
Recording.
Yeah, we can stop the recording, huh? And let's have a bit